Awesome, awesome, awesome to be with you. Hello, people. I've got my cat bothering me on the side here, but welcome to this first Johnny Vedmore live stream in a long while. It's a long while. This is very nervous. I see there's some people in the chat. Of course, Joel Allen, my man. Love you. It was great to come down and see you, or go up and see you. Sorry, you're at that part of the country, and spend a couple of days with you. That was awesome. Ray J, yo. And Stumbleina, hey, how's it going? I hope you are all well today. And this is nerve-wracking for me because, like I say, I had about 6 months on TNT doing this every day, every weekday live. And it was really that was really intense, but it's been a little bit too long, and I hope everybody can hear me fine and hear me well. And thank you all for being here. Little Carol is here, another one who we met up recently. Little Carol, you're great. What a woman. Love you, Carol. And I'm filled with love. I'm glad you could all join me. We got loads of stuff to look at. It's been big times. I've been waiting to do a live show for a while. I've got a couple of things in the works. I want to do more live stuff regularly. It's a little bit difficult at the moment because to afford to live, you've got to find other work. So I've got a little part-time side job at the moment, a little side hustle in a theater, a very special theater. It's really interesting. But on the side of that, I got that takes my time away a little bit because I got to make up the bucks. It's hard to make a living on the independent media. That's why we always say support the work, etc. But I'm planning a load of projects. So I've got a few articles that are in the works, a few things that are coming through that are going to be really, really interesting. Lucy Slater, hello to you. Oh, if only you knew. Dragos, how's it going, Dragos? My man, thank you for being here, and thank you for your support too. You've been great. I want to meet you one day. To be perfectly honest, I'm the type of person who likes to meet everybody, and that's why the TNT role suited me really well, man. I could talk to not only the people in the studio and stuff, but 4 guests a day sometimes, and preparing for that, it was really good practice, and I really want to do more of this. So I've got a few plans, and one of the plans is an independent media quiz show. So I hope loads of people are going to dig that when it comes, and I think it is going to be pretty good. And I know enough people on the indie media now to get some heads together and have some fun, because there's hardly any fun being had because we live in constant perpetual dystopia. Everything is just doom and gloom all of the time. Everything. We look at our political system. I mean, I've been trying to release as many articles. Lots of love, Dragos. I've been trying to release lots of articles that are of importance, not only importance to me, but this is my articles aren't necessarily driven by, there's no one telling me, oh, you've got to go right over there about this or that. What I'm trying to do is trying to understand this whole political system, the paradigm, the shape and color of everything, how it all works, who's on what side, what's real and what's not in the world of 5th generation warfare. Trying to work it out is hard. So I'm on this journey where it started off focusing in on cases that were usually intelligence linked cases, with Epstein or Younkerman or Pottinger. But it's kind of moving on now to a point where I'm trying to understand this whole political paradigm. So the people who know my work would know that I released the Third Way article in the past few months, which was really looking at how the left and right got deceived by Tony Blair, really, and Bill Clinton and the Third Way gang, who used a form of politics called third way politics, created by Anthony Giddens, which kind of purges the left and brings it into the center, and then holds the center ground, and that forces the right to go into the center, and then you've got no left or right, and you have these resurgent parties that come up that get beaten down and called racist or communist, racist, communist, racist, fascist, communist, fascist, communist. It's that juggle that they do. And it forces everybody in the center. And in the center ground, there's no political solutions. We all know this. Oh, Heather's in as well. Hello, Heather. Another one that I've had a few drinks with here and there. Hello. Nice to see you. So it's a really interesting political paradigm that we've got going on. I tried to understand that, so I've written it down in a way that other people can understand it as well. And then I had a little bit of unfinished business with the Eric Weinstein article about his UN work, where he worked on what is essentially I call the Great Synthesis, which is taking other people have other names for it, but taking groups of people and homogenizing everybody into being really the same race, the same color, the same accent, the same everything. And it's something that they see happening with globalism down the line. Third way politics is globalist in essence. And of course, Eric Weinstein is one of the intellectual dark web who claims to be one thing, but in actual fact, he's over on the other side through a lot of his career. He's a real esoteric thinker. So I think he's a perfect example of a manufactured antithesis. And we've had backwards and forwards online now, and that was quite fun because he used all of the cliche stereotypes they do to try and label someone so people won't listen to him. He used the same stuff that they use in the mainstream media. So that was really interesting. That he used the same cliche gadgets and tools to kind of smear me off to the side. But then I did, of course, the Third Culture article, which again is really linked with the Third Way article. It's about synthesis. It's about the fact that formal sciences and the other sciences that you have in social sciences, they don't understand each other. C.P. Snow makes the argument that in a book called Two Cultures from, I think, 1959, where he says, the people in social sciences and the arts, etc., they understand about Shakespeare, but those in formal science don't. And those who like Shakespeare and understand political paradigms don't understand the second law of thermodynamics. So they miss each other all of the time. And they were trying to synthesize the idea of these two cultures, two poles. This is intellectuals. They intellectualize, and they work out that there's two poles in any argument, and then they try and automatically say, well, it must be right to bring them together into the center for harmony. But it's not harmony. I think it's more something like Orwellian. You suddenly have this control over the top. And everybody here, what can you do? That's how society is made. They put a veil upon you, so you see it through what they see, what they want you to see. And the Third Culture was a lot about that. It wasn't only, it's about Musk and Epstein's relationship, because of course Musk went through Jeffrey Epstein funded Edge course on behavioral economics. It was which is really about managing people's psychology and behavior by using economics, but in actual fact it's a much sharper end of that stick that isn't anything to do with economics at all. Once you start in the business of trying to work out how to manipulate people, you suddenly realize, there's lots of scope. And that's what comes up in that article over and over again. They're like, there's lots of scope for more here. We could actually manipulate everybody, couldn't we? We could manipulate everybody in a really evil manner and get away with it because we're in charge. And that's, it comes to a point where these people really do end up using the basic everyday tools to be the most effective that they can. And those tools are, of course, totalitarianism. There's aspects of neocolonialism mixed in with communism, mixed in with fascism. Again, synthesis. What they learned, I when I see communism, fascism, etc., all of these things that were created in the past were honed down to a skill, a style. Like that's what the true is. That's what true communism is. That's what true fascism is. That's what true capitalism is. All of these things. Then the intellectuals have gone, no, which parts of those are best and which parts are worse, and what can we pick and choose and then synthesize? They can't stop themselves. They have to synthesize. And in a sense, that's partially what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a synthesis that is currently going on in the world. And I think you all know what I'm talking about because it's happening on all of our TV screens. You know, when two opposing forces meet, and what do you get? You get that conflict in the middle. And we know there's two places within our realm of the Western world that are on the edges of the Western world. And that's the most likely place you're going to get some sort of contact at some sort of point where there will be synthesis. And that's what's happening. Ukraine and Russia will come to an end soon. You know, this is something that I was talking about many times with people on the Johnny Vedmore show on TNT. It's clear if Trump got in, which it was always, for me, I always believed that a no-brainer that he would get in. There was no way that Kamala Harris could get popularity. She has like, she actually looks like she's wearing all her 7 faces at the same time. You know, she's got so many features on those faces, that face of hers. And it's like she's wearing loads of different faces all at the same time. And Joe Biden, you see now, so it's clear that they would have to have change of guard. And the Republicans, the modern Republicans, have become basically the neo-Democrats. They've become something else. What have you got? You've got Donald Trump, ex-Democrat, Elon Musk, ex-Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard, ex-Democrat, RFK Jr., ex-Democrat. You know, all of these people were originally, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard a little bit further back, you could say she's more independent with a Democratic leaning. But all of these people they've all come together. They've all synthesized. They were brought together. They couldn't help it. They used to be on the right and they used to be on the left. And then Clinton come along and he made the center and purged the left and made them evil. You don't want to talk to them. They're the conspiracy theorists, horrible people. Old CIA, Clinton, brought in all of that on the left. You're probably seeing that on the right ear screens. They bring that all on the left. And that forced the right to come in and start purging members of the right. And we've seen the right shout about it over the past 20 odd years. We know where we are now. We're right. We're in a homogenous blob in the center. That's where we are. And this Trump administration was always going to lead to something that looked like conflict. But not the conflict that was there while he was campaigning. I mean, most of the people, if you look at his cabinet, it is clearly full of people who support Israel. So, you know, can you imagine Trump turning against any of the people, actually having a like saying, I'm not going to support Israel, I'm not going to get involved in the Middle East, I don't want war, I'm a no war president. You know, that's how he put himself forward. But second terms are different. You're not going to get a third term. You could do whatever you like in the second term. Second term is usually comes straight after the first term and is meant to be like that breezy sort of period where you get impeached like Clinton. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Most of the time, like the second term is supposed to be much easier. We saw that with Obama, for sure. We saw that with George H.W. Bush, for sure. The second term was easier. I promise you, for George H.W. Bush, the second term was easier. And so this is we're going into a point where Trump can be let off the leash, and he is going to want to counterbalance what the project is in the Middle East. They're going to have to counterbalance it with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. So Russia and Ukraine, that war is going to end, and there's going to be a new war. So earlier on, I spoke with the man Kaan Disli. My cat's attacking me. I'm just looking for my mouse. That's cat and mouse in the sentence. So I talked to the man Kaan Disli. Kaan Disli is such a clever fella. He's such a clever fella. He is so switched on. He is a really, really nice boy. I say boy, like I'm in my 40s, so he's like 22, 23, I think. Just doing his masters in Paris. Amazing. He got a brilliant eye for research. Love him loads. So I recorded with him. There are only two short pieces that I'm going to play during this Johnny Vedmore live stream. I'll play the first one now, and then we'll have a middle bit, and I'll play the next one later. And it's really what we're doing is today looking at what happened, not what everybody else is doing, because everybody else always does what they want. They or what they not what they want. They do the opposite of what they want. They do what they're forced to do, which is explain the Syrian how we got here. It's always explain either the past or the present, but we need to go a bit further than that. So we also talk about like potential short term and long term, and I want to really discuss today the what is really going on in the Middle East, what we're heading towards, not where we are, but it's obviously predictable where we're going, and we need to discuss that, don't we? But for the time being, I'm going to just add Kaan Disli to the stage and leave him here with Kaan Disli. Kaan, you came on the podcast recently, and we talked about all of this region. We talked about Syria, Turkey, Iraq and Iran, and of course Lebanon and Palestine, and what was happening in that region. It's pretty. Things have changed since we recorded very quickly. What are your first thoughts before we get on to some defined points? What are your first thoughts about the events you're seeing currently in Syria?
Well, this is a really big deal. Nobody really expected this beforehand, and when we recorded this, I certainly did not expect the Assad regime to fall. And when the clashes, not even really clashes, but when the Assad regime started to back off from certain territories in Hama and Homs, I thought that when HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, when they started gaining territory, I thought it would be a temporary thing, that they'd back off afterwards. But it was clear that after that they've gained a few cities, the Assad regime, they kept backing off until they were back to Damascus. And even when they were in Damascus, they decided not to engage with the forces. So it was quite bizarre to me. And the dominant theory at the moment is that the Assad regime, because of the economic sanctions and the strangulation from Western countries, has become a really poor state. The average general, I believe, in the Syrian army gets about $10 per month, which is basically nothing. And these rebel forces, they could be getting anything up to 1,000 per month. Mm-hmm. So some believe that they were bribed by Western intelligence or people connected with Western states, which is a plausible theory, because given the fact that they did not even engage, this makes sense to me. And it seems like from sources inside Iran, Assad himself did also not want to engage with these forces as well. It seemed like in the last few days, he really changed his mind. At one point, while he was talking to Iranian ministers, first he said he wanted to engage, then he said he was going to do a peaceful transition of power. So even Assad himself, it seems like he didn't want to really put up a fight. Nobody really knows right now, but the only thing we know is that the linchpin that connected Iran to Hezbollah and the axis of resistance has been cut off. And it seems like the idea of or the desire for a Palestinian state in this century will probably not happen.
It's very interesting that that Turkey has been back in HTS. To some, at least that's what's being reported. Do you think they were at all involved in the operation? I know that you have to probably be a little bit careful because Turkish intelligence are off the hook. They're crazy guys. But do you think that Turkey was involved in any of these operations?
Well, if we think logically, I don't think it would be possible for Turkey to not know about this operation, because it's a really big operation, and Idlib is on the border of Turkey, and it seems like from the remarks made by the Minister of Defense, Yashar Güler, 2 weeks, even not even 2 weeks, maybe a week before the offensive from Idlib, he had stated that the Syrian National Army will form the new Syrian army. And at the time, when I heard this for the first time, I was a bit confused. I wasn't sure what this meant because clearly the Syrian regime has an army of itself. And well, the Syrian National Army is an army that is opposed to it. So how could it possibly be the case that the Syrian National Army will be a part of the Syrian regime? And at the time, it didn't make sense to me, but in hindsight, now it makes complete sense. Now that the Syrian regime is gone, it seems like the plan would be to form a new regime with the Syrian National Army at its center that is a lot more friendly to Western interests.
Mhm.
And the big problem right now we have is there's many factions fighting inside Syria. It is not only one faction, HTS and Syrian National Army, even though people may say they're allies, they're not the same organization. And the disputes between, for example, the Kurds and the Syrian National Army, the Syrian National Army is the one that's fighting the Kurds, and HTS at least has some sort of a ceasefire between them. So what's really interesting is the fact that people think the Western doctrine in Syria is to topple the Syrian regime and replace it with, I guess, a Western-friendly regime. But that's not exactly what it is. It's more like if you read the reports from the Rand Corporation, for example, they would much rather have a constant battle for territory between different factions where there's never a proper regime in Syria, where HTS is fighting another force, and well, HTS, which used to be al-Nusra, which is led by Mohammed al-Julani. He used to be an al-Nusra member, which is the Syrian part of Syrian faction of ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They would much rather these factions be fighting each other than form a strong national government that may pose a threat, because it may not be under their control fully.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. 'Cause, yeah, let's go through some of the consequences of this. Because I mean, the first thing is, what do you think the short-term consequences? I mean, obviously, it is going to be masses of turmoil. We've seen what happened in Libya directly afterwards was basically a collapse of the state. We've seen struggles in Iraq after the Iraq wars, etc. What do you think the short-term consequences in Syria are gonna be?
Well, in the short term, obviously, we're seeing Israel advance in Syria. They've always occupied the Golan Heights, but they're gaining more territory, and they've bombed the entire Syrian army infrastructure, and they've destroyed all the military equipment that a new government may acquire from them. So in the short term, Israel is a bit more comfortable now than they will be in the long term, because it is, to me, it is the case that organizations like the HTS, these are jihadi organizations. They're an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, and it is not exactly, there's not an exact proper way to control them. These organizations always get out of hand, and even though they may be serving Western interests at the moment, it is not for sure the case that they'll continue to do so in the future. Nobody knows what Giuliani will do, and it is clearly, I don't think, the case that it isn't the case that even if the Western media is trying to portray Giuliani as some rebel leader, his followers and his base, I don't think will be able to convert to that point of view. His followers, people fear, may do some massacres against the Christians or the Alawites. They're in the region. Hopefully that will not happen, but that is a possibility because Al-Nusra Front is not quite a peaceful organization. So it may get out of hand in the long term, but for the short term, Israel is celebrating.
Yeah, that is very true. That it could be a lot different in the long term. What are we looking at in as long-term consequences? Because I mean, I've got my own theories on this. I'd love to hear what your theories are.
Well, the long term would be what what Western countries would like to do is form a Western allied government in Damascus, and the Syrian National Army will be its formal army. I don't know how they will exactly cut up Syria. The Kurds are a big issue as well. Kurds are currently occupying. We talked about the Abu Kamal border in the show a few weeks ago. Now the Kurds have absolute control over the border crossing, and Iran will not be able to cross it. But the Kurds also have control over the oil resources in Deir ez-Zor. And to me, it doesn't seem like Kurds will get away with this. Western countries will not let Kurds control so much oil in Syria. But the Kurdish leaders, it seems like there's some sort of delusion that what they call, some people call it the Saladdin corridor, some people call it the David corridor, which is that a corridor that connects Rojava or northern Syrian Kurds to Israel, Lebanon, and Jordan, a corridor that goes through southern Syria. So there is some sort of delusion being propagated by Kurdish leaders. And in my opinion, this is probably some Western, I guess, diplomat told them that this could be possible. So they are going with the Western agenda and trying to help them in the hopes that they'll get some sort of territory out of this. But I highly doubt that'll be the case. It seems like to me, what's more realistic is that Kurds will lose territory. Yeah, so at the moment, a lot of factions are fighting. We don't know how it'll be cut up, but Kurds seems like I think they'll lose territory.
Yeah, I suppose that the Turkish may have given strict instructions if they were managing HTS for the Kurds not to benefit in the resulting freedom of Syria. Do you think that's right, or do you think that's naive or just simplistic?
Well, the fact that Kurds will lose territory doesn't exactly mean that Kurds will lose in general, because there are I think there are or will be negotiations between northern Syrian Kurds and the Western countries and Turkey for some sort of maybe autonomy. Because now that, and we've talked about this, the reason this is relevant is because in the show we talked about this, how there may be negotiations between northern Syria and Turkey because the Kurdish leaders are trying to create a ceasefire between the PKK and the Turkish government. And now that was, even then, at that time, that was like a possibility. Now that the Assad regime is completely gone, it is, I think, a much more likely outcome that there will be some sort of autonomous Kurdish state in northern Syria with less territory, possibly, but will have some sort of autonomy there that is like the northern Iraqi Kurds, the Erbil government in northern Iraqi Kurdistan. They are officially a part of the Baghdad regime, but they have some sort of autonomy. So it seems like that might be a possible solution.
Right. Well, there you go. The man Kaan Disli. You can't. I mean, that is a guy with a big brain. I swear to God. We've talked many times. We've had long conversations, and he's really a tactical researcher. I would describe him as a tactical researcher. I just want to go across to a chat. I love watching everybody ever. I missed that. I've missed that. I've missed you guys. I truly have. And just before I get on to Joel Allen's question, I just want to say hello, Al Craven. How's it going? And Adam Clark, the man Ruckus. Ruckus is in. Can you believe Ruckus is in the house? We're here. We have royalty. We have indie media royalty in the house, may I tell you. And I just want to, so with the question I was showing then, do you think the situation will create millions more leaving Syria for a better life in the West? And isn't this part of the plan to destabilize the area, creating mass migration? Yeah, well, Joel, it is true, and I want to bring somebody in very soon. It is someone who, for the time being, it's up to you to believe because we're going to remain anonymous here. But she's got a fantastic perspective, and we line up really well. And this is the first time I'm bringing someone on to my own platform show, which is really nice. I see that the producers had an easy life when they were dealing with me. So we can see the name there, though. Ellen. Ellen, how are you?
Can you hear me, Johnny?
Yeah, it's a bit rough. It's a bit rough. So can you tell people a little bit about yourself in the way that you can tell?
Sure. I don't mind telling you my name. It's Ellen Abear. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Telegram. I've been working with the resistance, all resistances, since I was about 20 years old. I'm 63 right now. I first started working with people in the Levant with PFLP when a friend of mine, this person befriended me in San Francisco, and his father was an original founding member of PFLP. His father's name is George Habash. And I've been pretty involved even before the internet. I used to go to ANC meetings before Mandela was released, and when a lot of people were living in exile, even the IRA in San Francisco. So I have a lot of friends that are Arab right now. My dream was to be a war reporter, but it didn't come to fruition. But I find it very fascinating, and I want to see the people, the resistance, defeat the powers that be, the powers that are oppressing us. And
I understand. No, I'm really glad that we can because I've been talking with Ellen for a while, and we've been talking about lots of stuff, and I figured out that her and Kaan Disli are probably the people who I am closest to in my view of what's going on in the Middle East in general. I really want to ask you a few questions, because I just want to ask you, like, what gets you to have such a drive to make such an impact? What is that? Just something that you've always had? Are you always been desperate to get involved in the action on the side of, like, the right side of history? Is that what you've always tried to do?
Yes, and I first started out with getting involved with NGOs, and I found out what those were about, and and that's just about money. What drives me is the people in the resistance. That's who drives me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Okay, right. So what do you see happening at the moment? What do you think is, how would you describe what's gone on in the past couple of weeks?
With Syria? With Syria, I think that was pretty well orchestrated. I would recommend people to listen to MENA, MENA, Uncensored Spaces on Twitter. A friend of mine who's Colonel Salmi in Ansar Allah, he's periodically interviewed, and he knows strategically exactly what's going on, because the Yemeni are just very involved. They're all throughout the Levant. They're just not in Yemen. And what I see happening, what was discussed last night, and not last night, 2 days ago. I just listened to the 4-hour recording yesterday, but I thought, I originally thought Jolani was a CIA construct, but now, but after listening to Layla, I believe he's Mossad. He has no family. There's no family, like no childhood, or he just pops up in Iraq, and then he's in Syria, and he's been in several. It was mentioned that he's been at several places right after right after a coup. This isn't the first time. He showed up in Iraq, and then he showed up here. And al-Baghdadi, it's believed he was also Mossad. In Tel Aviv, there's Islamic University. They can learn to speak fluent Arabic. They learn the extremism, Muslim extremism, and the attraction to that for them is they can break any law, kill people, do anything they want. They get money, and they never get in trouble.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
That's
they're all
amazing.
psychopaths.
I mean, I was erring on the side that it's, I always err on the same side, that it's a combination of all intelligence agencies all working together in the region to completely and utterly do what is right for them, and what they see as right for them is what's first and foremost what Israel want, because they got to expand the power in the region. That's what I see. And I've been trying to understand over the past few months, especially, how that is going to be achieved. What steps do you think? Because I mean, I know we talked about it. They were hitting targets in Syria, which would deplete the weapons capabilities of any incoming regime, which seems like an obvious thing to do when you're not sure what the regime's going to be like. But what else do you think is happening here?
Well, they hollowed out Syria for years, with all the Caesar sanctions and and just wore them down, wore them down, and then I mean the military, the Syrian army military was only getting, I think, $12 to $15 a month apiece, where these extremists were getting, I believe the paychecks for Jolani and the leaders were I think they were like $10,000 a month. So they just hollowed out that country to the point where Syria, to the point where there was no energy to fight them. So the military just walked away, and then as soon as their proxies took over, because these are they're agents. They've been groomed. They're never going to fight Israel. They're never going to fight the United States.
The language, the rhetoric is unbelievable. I'm not sure. It's like the most stale version of what Al Qaeda was supposed to be during 9/11. It's the most stale version. The right down at the bottom end, the real soft end of the stick. We don't mind. We are happy and grateful, and we hope that Israel will plant a rose in the Syrian garden, and we can all dance around and skip and be friends.
It's all inclusive, and it's all inclusive.
It sounds like globalism. It sounds like globalism. Yeah. It's like, is this? Are we seeing that's what's going to come out of the Middle East? Is that pole of multipolar globalism?
No, that's not going to come out of the Middle East. And what's going to happen is that's not the goal. The goal is destruction and destabilization, because it's the only way that the West and the Zionists can go in there and steal and maintain power, and make loads of money off of weapons and military. So
the future, what do you think the next step is here? They've got this regime, this HTS regime installed. Whoever's done it, whether it be Mossad taking the lead, MI5, CIA, they're all a bunch of and very much Turkish intelligence as well.
Yeah, that too.
Very much so. I mean, they've got him into power. I know Kaan Disli was saying, they want a fractured state, of course, keep him out of too much power. But we both think that there's a bigger agenda, and there's another country that comes afterwards, and it's not necessarily around.
It's Iraq. Iraq is coming next. Yeah, you have to look at the borders. The borders of Syria. They want to control Syria and create chaos. They completely destroyed every military depot, naval, air, all the bases. They just destroyed them, and that was intentional, because then the Zionists or the globalists, I don't know what to call them. They're the ruling class. Then they have the power over that area then, because they have a military. Now Syria doesn't have a military, and the goal is to stay. And then stealing. The United States is already has a third of Syria, the third where the oil fields and the wheat fields are. So you have to look at the borders, and that's where they're going to be going from next. Iraq is the next. I was told by someone in HTS that they're going to Iraq next. They do want to open up the prisons, but they're not opening prisons to let out young women and and just severely abused people. They're opening the prisons to let out ISIS. These are really dangerous people. So they're going to open up the prison in Iraq next to let ISIS members out. They're really, really dangerous members. But so, I mean, the United States likes those.
Are we looking at basically an eventual combined force in Syria and Iraq, or at least raisable, that is then the danger to Israel that makes them look like the victim?
I don't think so. I think Yemen,
because that's what my feel. That's what
I
my
think Yemen and Lebanon are a force that are threatening to Israel. And Iraqis right now too, because the Shia, the resistance in Iraq is fighting Israel. They want to put a stop to that, but they will try to turn the tables to make Israel look like a victim.
Yeah, but my thought is that it's not like the new regime will be extremely controlled, extremely manipulated, made to look exactly like the thing that threatens Israel the most, so they can have the most sympathy. Because that's what Israel basically works off. Its main defense is trying to get global sympathy for always being.
Always have been. I mean, they formed Israel for the Holocaust. That's why Israel exists, is to be victims.
Who do you think will take Iraq?
It's going to be HTS.
Okay, so it will be it's one
not
force.
HTS. It's not really HTS. It's Israel and the United States and England, Britain. We can't forget about Britain. I mean, Germany pumps all kinds of money into Israel too. Germany too. It's that's who's going to take Iraq. HTS is just like a proxy group. It's not. They're using that. They're using HTS. Yeah. I don't even think. I think Jolani has his days numbered. I think they're going to end up probably executing him in the long run, just like al-Baghdadi.
Yeah, so if you've got a destabilized Iraq and Syria, what will happen then, except for expansion by Israel? Is that what we're looking at? This will be the Greater Israel.
The Greater Israel Project, because they have to come in. They either are victims or they have to come in and create security because it's so dangerous.
So the next stage is then to take Egypt.
That'll be fun because most Egyptians don't want to be part of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
They don't even like Sisi.
But it's only the north of Egypt within the Greater Israel Project. It's only the north of Egypt.
Yeah.
So they can.
They don't want to take all of Egypt. They're happy with Sisi. They're happy with Sisi. They're happy with Abdullah. They control Jordan because they control the water in Jordan. The water is coming from Israel. They have control, whether electricity. So they have control of Jordan. They have control of Egypt. They have control of the Gulf states. That's Kuwait. They don't have control of Yemen. Yemen is not occupied, so that's going to be tough for them.
But it's quite far away.
It's a little far away, but the Yemeni military are not far away. They're in Lebanon and they're in Palestine. They're all over.
Yeah. So
their drones and missiles are, even though it's far away, are not that far away because the drones and missiles reach all the way to Tel Aviv.
Yeah. So how long do you think it's before we actually see something like this happening in Iraq? Is it going to be like within the next sort of 6 months? Is it going to be the part of what happens as what will Trump and Israel do? Everybody wants to know those, the answers to those questions.
I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think they're going after Iraq next, and I don't think Trump is going to end the wars the way most people believe. He's not going to end the wars. He didn't end them last time. He just didn't start new ones, but he certainly did give them more weapons. So I don't see him ending anything. He was behind the bill with all the money the last bill that went to Congress with the billions that went to Ukraine and Israel. He told his members of the Republican Party to pass that. That was supposedly the border bill, but it had really nothing to do with the border. And we're going to see more immigration, like your guest said. People are already leaving Syria. Kavork al-Massan, I was listening to him earlier, and he got his whole family out of Syria already because Christians are scared. Everybody's scared. That's not, everybody's scared. He said I've even heard people, not Kavork, but I've heard other people saying that they're out celebrating. They're not happy. They're doing it because they're afraid of the HTS and all these people. They're afraid of them. So.
Is this just like the basic version, the cut down version, the legal version for the time being of Islamic State then?
Yeah, well, it's like the Islamic or the Islamic version of Chile. That's what I see.
Oh, what like Pinochet's Chile?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's really complicated. Yeah, it makes sense though, because that's really was being installed by intelligence. Previous Allende mysteriously shooting himself. No, it was pretty bad times, but they got installed, and of course,
they polished things a lot since then.
They couldn't control Pinochet though completely, because that's what the Orlando Letelier stuff I looked into. That was very much him doing an act of terror on American soil. He was so balls out. And do you think that's going to be roughly what we see the same with this? Slowly they start off looking like the good boys, and these guys are going to get bad very quickly.
It depends if they listen to Jelani and the leaders, because I believe Layla that they're Israeli. They're Israeli. They have no history of childhood or family. That's very odd, because all the other resistance leaders, all the other Arab Mujahideen, they have families. Look at Sinwar. We all know where he was when he was a child. He wrote about it. Everybody had families. Jelani and his crew, we don't know anything about their childhood. They don't speak about families, about where they were a child. So he just popped up in Iraq. There's no record of him even being Syrian. So I believe that he's Israeli, and he will be loyal to Israel. He will practice extremism with jihadism, but he will be at the core loyal to Israel.
I wish I could do research in Arabic. I wish I could go and do research in Arabic. It escapes me. It's like, I'd love to go and find out about the history of these guys myself. When there's a mystery like that, someone looks like they're a construct. And I know. I love a hidden story. I'm always looking for a hidden story, and nearly everybody's got a hidden story, because of course that's what people do. They make the mistakes all throughout their life, and then they get better, and so they look back, and it's all dependent on how bad your mistakes are, is how bad you will be judged if they come to the foreground. I find that very interesting. I find this very interesting. What are you? Where do you want to Because me and Kaan had a conversation. I'll put on the second part very soon. And me and Kaan Disli, we were talking about what will happen next with Palestine, and we're not optimistic at all. We think Palestine is basically done. Do you have optimism, or are you kind of...
I have some optimism for Gaza. I do. I have some optimism for Gaza, because Yemen, Colonel Salmi said they are going to support Gaza. They are not going to stop supporting Gaza. And Yemen is very strong right now. So I do have I do have optimism. And the resistance, all the factions like Qassam and Syria, they're all doing very good. We're just not hearing about it. because they're killing like 4 to 30 Israeli soldiers a day in Gaza, and they're they have weapons. They're getting weapons. They make a lot of their weapons there. They use unexploded ordinances, and there's a lot of those. So there's ways to get stuff into Gaza. I don't want to say how, but there are, and I do have a couple of friends in resistance. I don't have a lot of hope for the West Bank because they're infiltrated. I know that. I was talking to a Mossad agent there. That I turned him in to somebody. I'm not going to say who he was or where he was in the West Bank, but I think they weeded him out. But they're infiltrated there. He's not the only one. They've got Palestinian Authority. They've got, and Palestinian Authority is really weird because they have they all belong to this cult called the Baha'i. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
No, wow, no, I've never heard of it.
It's a PSYOP cult. That's Abbas belongs to it too. And so they're like, and that makes sense because if Israel wants to force a people in there that are not going to, they're Palestinian, right? So they don't want them aligning with their own people. They'll create a cult so they stick together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what they've done in the West Bank. So I
in
know
a sense that kind of just basically Israel though is going to absorb them.
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to absorb Palestinian Authority, yeah. But the resistance in the West Bank, I don't think they're going to absorb those. I think that's why they're killing them. They're droning them. I don't know why those guys, they always do these videos where they show themselves making statements and then like the next day and the next couple of days later, they're droned and killed. Drones hit cars. And I don't know why they do that. I don't know if it's because they're infiltrated and they're being told to do that. I don't know.
Oh, it's just I get a feeling that it's just through routine.
Yeah, they shouldn't do that. That's just not secure. But
I don't think anybody's getting used to this changing face of this, fifth generation warfare mixed in with drone warfare, and cybernetics is coming as well. I mean, we're entering into really crazy times.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play the second half of the video. I'm sure there's going to be some people who have some questions for you if you want to stick around. Are you free right now?
Sure. And if you want to, if anybody really wants to, I suggest listening to Nena Uncensored on Twitter, on X, MENA Uncensored. They have podcasts like twice or three times a week. And they speak in Arabic, but then they translate it into English.
Oh, that's complicated. I wonder if there's a solution for that. You see, computers are bad and good. Like anything, and there's really good tools to actually translate stuff nowadays. It'd be really good if you find a way, because I find it so hard when I write in long form articles, getting people just to read their own language long form articles. People want it right in their face really quickly, and I understand it. Everybody says it. They want to just be given the information, and they want to just put it in their brain and then go on with the next.
They don't have time to read a book, right?
Yeah, I know, but
translation isn't that simple because everybody in the region speaks Arabic, but they all speak different dialects. So the interpretations can be completely different from one dialect to the next.
Yeah, we have the same here. We have Scousers when they're talking, and then you got like people from down in South Wales where they're talking like this, and well, they're not actually talking like that. It was more Pakistani. Anyway, I'm going to play the second half of this. We'll talk a little bit more after.
Thank you, Johnny.
The action that Israel was taken in Lebanon is directly linked to what's happened recently in Syria. Is it a case that the Israelis said, no more, we can't have any more weapons or arms coming in from Iran. The Syrian issue has got to be solved. And what does this mean for the future of Palestine?
Well, I think completely. And I don't know how, I think not many people have drawn this conclusion, but the ceasefire in Lebanon, I think, is directly, because it was 2 days after, directly correlated with what happened in Syria. I think the Syrian plan, some people say it was planned for March, but it was was enacted sooner because the ceasefire, Israel was just getting beaten in Lebanon. So after the ceasefire, and Israel has violated the ceasefire like 120 times, I think. And after the ceasefire, a few days after, the offensive begins. So I think it would be foolish to not correlate the two, considering that obviously Syria is the main conduit for Lebanon's or Hezbollah's arms.
So is and this is a like a completely depressing statement to make. I don't really want to make it, and I know lots of people have a very optimistic view, but is the idea of Palestine now dead? Are we entering into a stage where there's just not enough support realistically, and Israel have got the ability to do whatever they like in the region at the moment?
Well, from the looks of it, it does really seem so. And both sides, even what they call the axis of resistance, Iran, Syria, and Iraq, even they're demoralized, I believe. And it seems like there's no possible way of putting pressure on Israel through Hezbollah. So, in my opinion, if we were to look at this realistically, the axis of resistance is really going up against there's really a power imbalance here. They don't have the resources, they don't have the military capability to help Palestine. Like if we were to possibly imagine a way Iran, because Iran is the main force in the region, Iran would help Palestinians. I don't see how that's possible. And it seems like now that Syria is gone, there may be normalizations between Saudi Arabia and Israel in the coming years. And it's, to me, the reason why October 7th really happened is because Hamas did recognize that there would be normalizations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, that there would be an IMEC corridor that connected Saudi Arabia to Israel, to Europe, and this economic corridor would effectively be the way Saudi Arabia normalizes relations. And Kurds also realize this. Kurdish leaders talk about the IMEC corridor as well. So in the coming years, if it is the case that Saudi Arabia normalizes relations with Israel, well, that means that definitely Gaza is gone forever, and even, well, Jerusalem might completely belong to Israel as well. So Israel will have achieved all its goals.
That is heavy. And it's really heavy. I mean, for a lot of people who will be listening, they won't want it to be so. Whether or not it's going to be so, they won't want it to be so. But we do look like we're entering into an end game. I felt that with October 7th anyway, that it was the start of an end game. They obliterated. They didn't care about committing acts of genocide. Israel have just obliterated as much as they can. And the rebuilding will take years and years in Gaza alone. The settlements completely have infiltrated the West Bank, so it looks like we're approaching endgame. Now, talking about that endgame, lots of people have said to me, well, how, if Israel go to do that, surely some of the Arab neighbors will stand up and defend the Palestinians, which haven't happened really properly so far. And we're talking about the region surrounding, the powerful region surrounding, including, yes, Jordan's there, but Iraq and Syria are definitely involved. I've had a lot of people who are seem to know a lot about the region who have said to me behind the scenes they're looking to destabilize Iraq next, and we'll see the same sort of thing with potentially HTS also taking Iraq, and that will leave Israel surrounded by one enemy that could be painted at any time as Al Qaeda or some form of Islamic fundamentalist force. Do you see that? What do you think's happening in Iraq? Do you think Iraq will be destabilized next? And do you think this is a way to try and make Israel into some grand victim?
Well, it's definitely the case, I think, because Ansarullah today, I believe, announced that Israel's missions will be extending from Syria to other countries, and I think he meant Iraq and possibly Iran. So, I mean, if the Yemenis people, if they're saying this, I think there's some credibility to it. And we know that for Iran, at least, about a month and a half ago, I think it was, that there were leaked documents. These documents were leaked on Telegram from the Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which is part of the Department of Defense, that they collected intelligence that showed that Israel was preparing in the Hatzirim air base different airplanes, the fighter jets that would bomb Iranian nuclear sites. So Israel has had the idea of bombing Iranian nuclear sites on their mind for a very long time. But I think when the documents were released, the plan was foiled and maybe they postponed it. I don't think it was completely, it's not completely out of the question that Israel will do this, but it's just if it's known beforehand, it really defeats the purpose. So Israel is probably still plotting how they can destroy Iranian nuclear sites, because now that Syria is gone, the main deterrence that Iran had against Israel was through Hezbollah, and obviously Syria provides the weapons to Hezbollah. But now that that's gone, the only card in the deck for Iran is now to get a nuke. If Iran gets the nuke, then that is the only way they can deter Israel. So obviously, it seems like they may want to advance their nuclear research programs, and they want to enrich the uraniums. And if that is what's on Iran's mind, what's on Israel's mind would be, let us bomb these sites. So yeah, I think the information you got is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and for people who may not be aware, what that means if Iran gets the nuke is that Israel have the Samson option, which means that if they are struck or attacked by nuclear weapons, their nukes are pointed at the West. So it's a way it's part of the dynamic or paradigm of mutually assured destruction, that if Israel is not defended by the West in response to nuclear attack, or to prevent nuclear attack, then basically the West will end up being nuked by Israel. That's about right, isn't it?
Certainly.
Yeah, amazing, amazing times. A couple of other notes, and one of most importance, really directly, is what about the Alawites? We all know Bashar al-Assad, his father, etc. They come from the Alawite minority. Are they going to be protected the same way by HTS? That they've promised, that HTS has promised to protect all minorities in Syria, or do you see there's going to be human rights violations coming up?
Well, that's a complicated issue because, as if people don't know, the Alawites in Syria are a minority, but they were the ruling class for since the Assad family, and Assad is an Alawite. The main Alawite cities right now are, I believe, Latakia and Tartus, and in Tartus there are two Russian air bases. That I believe right now there are negotiations between HTS and Russia to keep those air bases. So what happens to the Alawites? It seems like nobody wants to think of the worst, but obviously there is this sectarian aspect to the conflict where the Sunnis are not really fond of the Alawites. And maybe in the coming months, we may be hearing news of like certain, I guess, maybe tortures or massacres of Alawites. Hopefully this will not happen, but HTS, considering they're an Islamic fundamentalist organization, this is not out of the question. And now that they're in Damascus and all these, many of these cities are Sunni majority, but there are still Alawites. So hopefully nothing bad will happen. But considering this is not an organization that is really kept in check, anything may happen, and we may see some ugly news.
When it comes on, you're talking about the Russians, and this is probably the last point now, is we're talking about the Russians and how they are going to try and protect their air base, or you said they got an air base in there as well as a naval base. Wow. So is it now a case of who can buy out HTS faster, the West or Russia? And is HTS somehow linked with the West in a way that is impossible for Russia to infiltrate?
Actually, I don't think they are, considering that it is true that the West has backed HTS, and I don't think anyone can deny that. But they are, in a certain sense, I guess, an autonomous organization, and they may, depending on who pays more, they may sway one way or another. And I don't think they want to have a conflict with the Russians either. The Russians are a powerful force, and they don't benefit from angering the Russians. So I think they'll allow Russia, because what Russia really wants is the access to the Mediterranean as well, in their and they want to keep their bases. So I think it will be beneficial for both parties if Russia is fine with the Assad regime being toppled, and HTS is fine with Russia keeping their bases. And Russia will try to arrange negotiations with them. They'll try to arrange some deals with them. Because now that there's a new alliances forming between the Kurds and HTS and the Syrian National Army, Russia doesn't want to be, I guess, an outsider. But obviously, we also need to consider the fact that before Trump gets in office, Russia really wants to get Kursk back. They really want to win the Ukrainian war, and they want to make sure that they gain all the they will be able to keep all the territory they've gained until Trump comes in. Because Trump, it seems like when he comes in, he's gonna say, well, let's have a ceasefire, and whatever territory Russia and Ukraine have right now, that'll be the territory they'll keep.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends, honestly. Not everything, but Russia's actions really depend on the Ukrainian situation.
One more question then. One more question that comes to mind. Is all of this happening now just simply because Donald Trump is about to be the president and about to go to war with Iran?
That's a difficult question. That's certainly a factor, but I'd say other factors are ceasefire in Lebanon. I think that's a big factor. Obviously, everything that started this was the Al-Aqsa flood, the Hamas offensive. That has definitely been a factor in this as well. And Trump coming in, that's also a big factor, because there may be large shifts in Middle East and, I guess, Ukrainian policy. We don't know what will happen in the Trump regime, and I don't think anybody knows, but people are trying to make sure that they have their negotiation ability to the maximum. So yeah, that's a big part of it, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, well, excellent. Kaan Disli, my man, I will put all of the links in the show notes as well so that people can find your work. Thanks for coming on and explaining it all. That's really, I think you've got a very accurate perspective on what's going on. And thanks. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. I'd have him anytime. I'd have him anytime. I tells you, I'll have him. I'll bring Ellen back soon. Just gonna look at do a little bit of housekeeping. In the meantime, I just wanted to say Joel Allen was asking about Syrian Girl. Me and Syrian Girl did NEWSPASTE together, and it was very interesting. I like her. I think she's very nice. But she's surrounded by an impossible situation. Everybody is in that circle of people who are looking at the Middle East are in such a state of trauma by what they're seeing. These guys are watching the worst stuff every day because it is happening and they are passionately involved in it. And so they just can't understand anything but the most sort of like extreme view. And I'm not saying the extremist, I'm saying the extreme view, which is, it's all one person. And I made the argument in the next space that it was actually Israel working alongside the CIA, working alongside MI5, MI6. And other security agencies. They're the problem together. It's one big globalist blob. And she was like, oh, that does sound about right. And she's like, I think I'm starting to think that maybe that's the way it is. And then someone cut her off, and she didn't talk to me much again. We didn't have another conversation. I tried to talk to her a couple of times, but I don't think she was very interested. I think she hangs around with the Ryan Dawson lot and those lot, and it's very complicated. It's a very fractured world, is this? And it was nice to see Eileen come in, and I thank you all for all the people who are having making the comments as well. El Craven, like to see you chatting away in there. Nice to see. Love change my pictures. Hello, how's it going? Really, really nice to see some really good people in the house tonight. I will bring back Helen. We'll have a little bit more of a conversation, and then probably take it up to about the half an hour mark and be out of here. So let's have a little bit more of a conversation. Hello, Ellen. How are you?
Hello, Johnny. Can I address a few issues that were addressed just earlier?
Yeah, most definitely. Say everything you need to say.
Okay. One thing is that it's believed that Iran already has nuclear warheads. There's a lot of earthquakes in the region, and they have really deep underground facilities. And if you ask anybody in the Middle East, they'll tell you that Iran already has nuclear warheads.
Mm-hmm. But would they have a delivery system? That's one of the problems, because that's what happened with the Pakistan and Indian nuclear programs. Pakistan was racing India, and I think India got there in 1974, if I remember correctly, and Pakistan not till a lot later. But India, they got to the nuclear level with a warhead, but they didn't have a proper delivery system until I think the 90s.
Well, they've been testing their nuclear weapons. That's what I mentioned, the earthquakes. There was an earthquake, I think time just really is strange with this war going on, but I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, or maybe even sooner, where there was an earthquake in Iran. And I asked my friends, in that region, people I know in that region, and I was told by a few Ansar members that's Iran testing their nuclear weapons.
Right, okay. Well, I would believe that. I mean, there's been a lot of earthquakes in Iran now, so I mean, it's not like people would think it out of sorts either for the region. They always
I think it's the area that the earthquake occurred. I think that they have an underground facility there, and their nuclear facilities are very deep underground. It's not like a flat desert in Iran. There's mountains, and it's a lot harder for a military to defeat an area that's mountainous with many different terrains. That's one reason why the Saudis they couldn't defeat the Yemenis. So Iran is not going to be easy to defeat. And then Iran does have an ally, which is Russia.
Big ally. Big boy, big player.
Big ally. Yeah, because that wasn't mentioned, because it's not just Iran and Yemen against the West. It's Russia's there too. They're big, and China. China gets all their oil from not all of it, but most of it from Iran. So they have a big stake there too.
Yeah. I can imagine that China would be more likely to supply technologies more than anything to Iran, and that might boost their capabilities to be able to develop something that does actually deliver a nuclear warhead. And then by that time, though, I don't think they're going to be able to get to that time. Do you think that how would that even work? How would a war against Iran? How would Donald Trump go about having a war against Iran right now, do you think?
It's not. I don't think it would be his choice. I think it would be Israel's choice. It's Israel that wants the war with Iran. They're the ones that are going to go about it. If they go about it, and then they'll just tell Donald Trump what they want. I mean, he has a lot of Zionists in his camp. That he's assigned to the cabinet. He accepted $100 million from Miriam Allison. He owes Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does. And
then I wanted to address too that Israel it's not doing that well. They're not doing that well. They're also collapsing from the inside. A lot of the their military are all there's a couple that aren't. There's a few divisions that aren't conscripts, but most of them are conscripts that are that are reserve forces. So they're not. A lot of them will refuse to go back to the military, go back into Gaza, go back into the military. Period. And it's growing bigger and bigger. There's like, I think it was like, I think I was told it was about 500 that are refusing to go back. And there's a lot. I heard there was something like close to 90,000 permanent casualties. Yeah. So Israel is also collapsing economically. So
this is why I do believe, just to intersect here, is that this is where I believe there needs to be a point where Trump puts boots on the ground. That's what makes a war. It's not just air power. It's what makes a war. If he's going to go for a war against Iran, he's got to do boots on the ground. For that, it just seems to be, like, narrative-wise, what I can see is Israel is threatened, and they've got to go and protect them because they're completely threatened. More than 1967. It's got to be worse than that. They got to be surrounded by something that can be painted as Islamic State extremely easy like this. And that Israel needs to look like threatened so that they can actually support Israel by putting boots on the ground. And that will be the big change. That's a big difference. Israel and America fighting alongside each other is something that is going to happen at some point in the future. It's going to happen out in the open. It's not just going to be intelligence agencies and spies working together. It's not going to be supplying missiles, supplying aid, and supplying those things. At some point, the thing that changes it is America having boots on the ground. And do you understand what I mean by that?
Oh yeah, the military is not going to be able to. I mean, Israeli military is not going to be able to keep carrying out this Greater Israel project. They don't have the manpower. So
it has to be supported.
It has to be. If it continues, it has to be. They didn't have enough manpower for southern Lebanon and Syria. They had to.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it seems obvious that the missing component here for Israel is that they need actual boots on the ground doing things for them, and that I could see that in somewhere like Lebanon. Do you think it will be an American force, or will it be a NATO alliance?
They already have somewhat of a force put together. They're using private, like, securities companies. It's called what is it called? United Forces. That's what they're calling themselves, United Forces. There's a lot of them that are intelligence, though, like World Central Kitchen. The 3 Brits that were killed in World Central Kitchen, the first drone attack on the World Central Kitchen vehicles, 3 of those were MI5, MI6 commandos. Mm-hmm. So that's another way they get. They try to infiltrate Gaza is through aid delivery. They get commandos in that way. But I don't know about Europe. But I know Turkey has a huge military force. The United States doesn't. I mean, they're having trouble drafting people. So if they have to use other militaries,
that would be.
I don't know about Britain.
That would be like super hyper neocolonialism or grand neocolonialism, wouldn't it? Because that would be like the Ottoman Empire kind of getting involved. Like, ooh, we'll just sneak back into this space now, and now we've got hold. I think that is how they would use Turkey, though, in that way.
That's how they're using Turkey now. I think Erdogan wants his Ottoman Empire back.
A question from Joel Allen asked a question, which I think we all know the answer to. It says, do the commercials in the US advertise for donations for all of these wars while simultaneously funding them? And I think that's the most definite yes.
Yeah. Yes. I heard Turkey has some phenomenal commercials ads on right now. Colonel McGregor was talking about that. He knows people in Turkey, and he said it's all over the news. The Ottoman Empire is getting bigger, and they need donations, and yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, this is there's a certain level of we think we're different and we're going to do things differently, but the Turkish Empire of the past was massive, and it was in charge for a very long time of the regions where we now see lots of struggles, and those regions had kind of been left, even though they had been, there was obviously terrible things throughout history with the Turks. The Ottomans were definitely not a force to be they were a force to be reckoned with. They were not very nice on a fair few occasions, but there was a lot of ability for them to people in the areas to actually live out their traditional lives, and the traditions remained the same. Do you think a new Turkey would be like that if they started to become influential in the region?
You have to keep in mind too, Turkey is mainly, I believe it's mainly Sunni Muslim.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they're right in line with, HTS and supporting HTS because that's Sunni.
Yeah. So is that basically as it goes? Is it like Catholics and Protestants? HTS is Sunni, so it's like
bad. It's just as bad. It's just as bad, as not worse.
Wouldn't it make sense when we're discussing this? I'm thinking through what they would be talking about in a military round the table in Doctor Strangelove, what they would be having a conversation about, and they would be definitely thinking that it would be better to use a local force to actually do their war for them. So could a war against Iran actually see Sunni forces? Combine Sunni forces, and that would be all they need, the West need.
Well, if they brought Turkey in, that would, Turkey, they have a huge military, huge.
And HTS just popped up next door to Iran as well. I mean, it seems like there could be some form of reckoning being organized and orchestrated here. What do you think?
Well, I will tell you, on social media, I'm getting a lot of hateful comments from Turks by talking bad about HTS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I suppose. Go on.
I believe that country is supporting it. Like they're being loyal to HTS because they're Sunni.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. It's always the same, some form of religion. It always comes back to the same things at the end of the day. I mean, it's really
not about religion in the long run. That's not what the puppet masters are. They just want control.
They're use it.
Yeah, they're using it.
Yeah, I don't think most Zionists are actually holy people. That's for sure.
No, and also one more thing I wanted to say is they are having public executions right now.
Mm-hmm. In Syria.
Yeah. I've seen many videos that are real. They're not on YouTube. They're not on TikTok because they won't post them on TikTok. They're only posting these stupid release, these prison release videos. We don't even really know where they're coming from. They could be American prisons staged like in Aleppo or Idlib, or it could be in some other country. I don't even think they're showing people coming out of prison that supposedly they found these underground prisons, right? Using dogs, sniffing them, and the people were down there for up to 50 years, but they come out of the prison. They show some video. CNN's filming them too. They're finding CNN is finding and liberating prisoners. So and it's the same reporter that spoke about the 40 beheaded babies, and she was on October 8th, right after October 7th. She was they were the film crew. She was laying on the ground because Hamas was sending missiles all the way to Tel Aviv, that wasn't happening. So, and then she found these prisoners underground in corners and blankets, and there's a video of that. And these prisoners come out of the ground after they've been there for over 20 years, and they're if you go in the sunlight, if you're underground that long without any light, you can't just look. You have to cover your face, your eyes.
You become a Morlock or whatever they call
Right. Yeah, and these people, they have trimmed beards. They come out. They just, the light's not bothering them. It's. I think all these videos are staged. I'm not saying there aren't torture prisons. The United States is known for having torture prisons. So it's not that they don't exist.
When you have any event like this, I spend most of my time with like one eyebrow up, being like, whatever, for the first parts of it, because I never believed it. It's like when the gas being used in Syria. It was just, you have to watch it with all tongue in cheek, and they get caught out all of the time nowadays because so many people are filming, so many people are happy to talk about their experiences and stuff. But it all helps, doesn't it? Because it's all an era of 5th generation warfare. It's all about destabilizing people.
It's all about destabilizing chaos and digital, and they'd love to have all this on AI and control it, running on AI. They'd love that. But they are having public executions. That is definite. And people are running out of Syria. They're killing all the Syrian, the army under Assad. Any members that they can't find, they execute, and they're doing it in public. So that is going on, and I just think it's a matter of time before they start killing Shia and they start killing Christians. That always happens. It always happens.
Oh, but we've been told that they're the nicest, happiest people around, aren't they? They're the best. They're not like the old
moderate rebels.
They had a little bit of a shave. They've put on some green khaki pants and a green shirt. And now they're all right. But this is how it is. It's always framed, and it's framed by the first people who arrive on the scene, and they're always the most suspicious. Ellen, thank you for coming on. I really wanted to cover a load of things from angles people haven't seen, and you and both you and Kaan Disli look at things in slightly different directions. And that gives a complete, I love having a range of perspective, but I think it all sounds like roughly the same thing. A big game, a long game, I see the same thing happening, and it's the West somehow having a mass influence over the region that can never really be rolled back, not at least for hundreds of years. That's what they really want. Do you want to say anything before you leave?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for listening to me, to the audience. And you can interact with my Twitter if you want to. I answer questions. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, I'd be glad to. It's Ellen Jean Abear on Twitter. It's all one, no spaces. At Ellen Jean Abear on Twitter.
And you're awesome, and I love the fact that we started having a conversation at the beginning of the year, like loads of conversations at the beginning of the year, and I really love the way you look at things, and I thank you for coming on. And cheers! It's the first Johnny Vedmore live it's gonna come out. There's gonna be plenty more to come of this string of shows. So I hope you come back sometime soon. All right?
Yes, thank you, Johnny.
Okay. There you go, Ellen. Oh, she's a firecracker. Firecracker, dangerous lady. Don't get on the wrong side of Ellen. I swear to God. I listen. Hey, you guys. I've been watching you days, trying to get with this sort of like vibe and doing a live show all on my lonesome. It's really nice to have a good crowd, a load of people who I love in there. I've met a few of you guys. I've been round your houses, and it's been really nice. I'm someone who loves to interact with people. So one thing I'd say just before we close out, and I'll probably say a couple of things before we close out. If you actually want to have a conversation with me or want to ask me questions or anything like that, then do so. Do so in whatever way. You can go to newspaste.com, go down to the bottom. That message form will go straight through to my email. You can find me on. I'm always on X, really. It's buzzing away in the background, causing trouble here and there, and I cause trouble on there too. Everybody causes trouble. That's what you have. That's how you get change. And you know, if you want to reach out, have a conversation with me. I'm a real person. I know that all of the people who have come in and chatted, I know loads of you, and I know you're real people as well. And that's who's got to win this at the end is real people. I don't want to be cliched and corny when I say that, but the fact is, we're looking right into the abyss. We are looking so far into the abyss. We have got a real problem right now. We've got an agenda being unrolled in front of us, and it's an obvious one. We could have seen down the line. If we had actually looked down the line, we could see it all the way down the line. It's pretty obvious that you've got the intention for the axis of evil to be destroyed, and that axis of evil was always going to include Iran. They've got to homogenize, they got to synthesize, and they go about it by creating manufactured enemies, manufactured heroes, and then you turn the heroes against the enemies and you merge them and synthesize them, and then you go on to the next. And it's a way that America and Britain and the neo-colonial powers, they express their power. They get out as many people as they can, and they keep synthesizing them, but they don't do the work themselves. They allow other people to do them. Once upon a time, Britain would send out an army to do all of this stuff. Now they send out special operations teams to train up certain armies and certain groups from elsewhere. And this has happened for the past 75 years. I mean, you go back to the first coups with King Farouk, you had Nasser and his generals in the free Egyptian army or something like that. It was another free army. And they went and did the same thing. You know, they get supported, and then they get someone else to do their dirty work. And what we're looking at the moment in Syria is dirty work. Personally, I differ slightly from Ellen in a couple of places, and I differ slightly from Kaan Disli in a couple of places. I see a narrative being built. I see the Greater Israel Project can't happen post-genocide. And that's what they're doing right now. We all know what's happening right now. There's a lot of people, including like a third of them are children. That's insane. I don't care what the numbers are. I don't want to bicker over and argue over the numbers. When a third of all casualties are children, you definitely got a problem. You know, there's definitely something really wrong with what tactics are being used. And it's clear to us that it's more than 40,000 people have been killed in Gaza. And it's probably reached levels that are close to what happened in Iraq, and it's a much smaller area of land. You know, it did, mind you, they say there was 500,000 to 1 million killed overall in Iraq. Imagine that. Just crazy. And we are in crazy times, and we should be really concerned about what's going on, but they're going to march forward, and the only way to do that is by creating a big power that surrounds Israel and is a boogeyman. Because you create the character, and then you can raise the people up around you to fight against this enemy. Whether the enemy is actually your true enemy or not, it doesn't make a difference. It's all show. We all know this is all show. They're pulling levers, strings over here, and they're doing all of their business, and it's going to be extremely hard to stop. These things are stopped with ideas that people like you and I may not be able to think of, ideas that will catch on mimetically and just flow through time and make people turn around and say, oh, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to change what we're doing by saying this thing, and then suddenly that bursts on and causes people to have change. But like, we're really deep into this now. They've had a lot of practice manipulating things. And I think what we're seeing here is the remnants of Islamic State were reorganized, used by Western powers to exact their own power in the region, push on this army so that it would take over Syria at the right time when Donald Trump's just coming into office. And then somehow they can be, oh, look, these HTS, I know they used to be like Islamic State, but nowadays they're all right, so let's go and let's help them to defeat Iran. And we're going to see another proxy war, because I don't think we're going to see many all-out wars, but eventually, if they want the Greater Israel Project to happen, it's going to have to be boots on the ground. I think that's the time that people really like, that's the thing that isn't being talked about here. If Donald Trump puts boots on the ground it will be insanity. America will be on fire. America will be on fire. The whole world will. I mean, the fact is we are getting there, though. They got control. They know how to manipulate people. They use all different types of ways to do it. And they've done it here. So here you go. Syria is a bad state. It's not very good there. There's lots of fires, lots of bombings. They're still being bombed now, even though they're praising Israel. At the same time, Israel are bombing the weapons dumps as much as they possibly can because they're preparing. What they're preparing for, we'll see. We'll see eventually. I want to again thank you all for joining me. Really nice to see all the gang in the house. And you've all been beautiful. This has been a Johnny Vedmore Live, and I will be back with you soon. I promise you that.